Hey, it's Ben from Alternate Experiences here. So what I want to talk to you about is what kind of activities are suitable for large groups, and in particular, what things to think about. So I've got 3 or 4 different things here that I think are well worth considering. The first one is, of course, logistics. So say you've got hundreds of people, all eyes are on it, so many people participating. You don't want the embarrassment of it falling flat on its face. You need to nail those logistics, and you need to think about if the activity you're considering works well logistically for it. So even on a very practical level, say it's a puzzle-based activity, how are you going to literally score those puzzles? Are you going to use an app? Will everyone have access to that app? Is it going to confuse anyone? Are you going to manually score it? How are you going to avoid log jams? How are you going to keep it all running smoothly? I've seen far too many activities that could be great, but just kind of have all these kinks to them logistically that mean they just don't create that great moment that they should have. Next thing to think about is group management. Now, often people think you need loads and loads of facilitators when you've got a really large group. Yes, of course, it will help, but it's not always necessary. At the very least, you just want to make sure that whoever is running that activity, even if there's only a few facilitators, that they're doing it in a way where they have real good control of the group and they really know how to keep it running smoothly. They can really take that activity by the scruff of the neck and not let things kind of go off on tangents. So it's not always just about the number of facilitators. It's just about the way they approach the management of that activity. Next thing to think about, simplicity. So when you have really large groups, generally I would err on the side of simplicity and just what I call sweat a few key elements as much as possible. So in particular, people are tempted to maybe overcomplicate things here with too much tech. We actually have some games where when we run them for larger groups, we simplify how we run them for those large groups because we know that there's too high a risk that some people might get confused by the technology. Because say 1 in 50 people might get confused on average. If you have 500 people, all of a sudden that's 10 people you've got to find that are struggling with how it works. So I would really think about the simplicity of the activity and what you're doing there. Finally, I would suggest that you want to think a bit about how you actually harness the energy of that group. So a lot of the time people see that large group as a hindrance, but lean into it. You've got this massive group here. You can generate so much energy in such a peak moment. If it's an activity that breaks people into sub-teams, is there something you can do that brings everyone together? Or part of that activity is where everyone completes it at once or everyone's participating at the same time as a whole group. It creates such energy in the room. I would always recommend finding a way to weave that into the activity. So those are the things that I would consider first and foremost when you're considering what activity is right for a large group.